This is a 1966 Skidoo Olympique 250cc. I found this one on Facebook Marketplace, ended up paying $250 for it. This thing had been sitting for about 30 years. This is what it looked like when I picked it up. It was sitting in a barn, plenty of dust on it. Surprisingly, it did still have spark. Turned over, had compression, so I thought this thing would possibly start. Decided to put a little gas down the tank, give it a good prime and everything. After a good few pulls, it actually did fire up and run a little bit.
How about that?
Unfortunately, after putting gas in it, I did figure out that the gas tank was leaking and had been previously patched. One of the downsides to these gas tanks is they're part of the chassis. So to get to it, you got to pull everything apart. This hood is riveted and screwed on it to drill out all of those and pop this little bumper off. Then I can actually start pulling the hood apart and getting everything out of the way to get to stuff. Once the hood was off, you could actually see what it looked like underneath here. It was nice and dirty overall. As you can see, the gas tank is part of the main chassis. Now it's time to get this thing cleaned up and see what I'm working with exactly. After an overall inspection, I figured out that the main track drivers were completely disintegrated and gone. So to replace those, I did need to pull the track and suspension and everything out of it. Since I was going that far, I kind of decided, well, I might as well strip this thing completely down to the frame and kind of just do it all. So to do that, originally started pulling the motor and out, and here the chain case and main drive shaft and stuff is going to be loosened up and pulled out. Found out that's really easy, just to use a forklift to lift this thing up and kind of make it nice and easy to work on. So I'm pulling all the bogie wheels out here. Once those are out, I'll loosen the tension on the track, and then I can get that main driver out and pull the track out. These seats removed very easily. There was 2 bolts holding the main backrest on. Once that popped off, basically the main seat just slid off a couple clips. So here's the entire thing pretty much all the way disassembled. The motor and the suspension, the seats, the hood, and the rest of the drivetrain, the tracks and stuff. So here I still need to pull the skis and then the rest of the steering system off, which those don't take too much to get removed. And then I pretty much have a bare chassis at that point. After removing some paint and some JB weld, I figured out where my leak was coming from, and it looks like this wasn't a rust issue. It was basically a crack in the frame from hitting something, and it split right at the seam. Since this metal was nice and clean, I decided I could just weld the seam back up. So basically kind of ran a bunch of tacks across there, went over it a couple times to make sure that it was good and sealed up. In order to get this thing prepped for paint, I wanted to remove all the old paint. I tried some different spray-on paint strippers, and it worked okay. Let it sit for a while, kind of eat away, and then power wash it off. In the areas that weren't very rusty, the paint came off pretty good. In the rusty areas, it didn't do much good. So in the end, I kind of ended up going crazy on it with a wire wheel to get all the little stuff off. After everything was stripped and cleaned, it was primed and then painted back to yellow. Originally, I was going to leave the hood alone, but after painting the chassis, it didn't quite match the same color, so I decided to tackle this too. There was a hole in the side that needed to be patched with some fiberglass, and then I filled in some of the major cracks and holes, but left plenty of character. The seats were the next major thing. These were in very rough shape overall. The main seat cover had basically nothing left of it. Underneath it, the foam was really gross, mixed in with some styrofoam in there. Really had no padding left to it overall, so this needed to be completely redone. The backrest was equally as bad. Once I pulled the cover off, I found out underneath here the wood was pretty much all rotten. None of it was really salvageable, so I used these as a template and cut all new pieces of wood. So these seemed to turn out pretty good. I did use some of the original foam as the main foam and then covered it with a nice new sheet to give it a nice smooth finish overall. This piece was pretty challenging to recover. The main seat was much more straightforward. Basically just cut a new sheet of foam with it and then recovered that as well. At this point, it was time for a reassembly. I installed the new drivers and chain case and then started with the track and suspension again. And then reinstalled the skis as well as the steering linkages and then placed the motor back in place. After that was complete, I reinstalled the seats. As you can see on the backrest, I did end up making a little aluminum strip trim piece to kind of cover up my staples. These were just held in place with a few finishing nails. This is the final product. After painting the hood and adding decals and reinstalling everything, I also ended up making a custom brake cable and throttle cable because the original ones were not salvageable.